There are 65 days until the inauguration. And then at noon, Donald Trump will swear the 35-word oath that was taken by George Washington and Abraham Lincoln, and that he already desecrated once. When he completes it, he will be the most powerful man in the world again. He will sit atop the National Command Authority with the ability to trigger Armageddon at whim. This is the warning. He has created a cabinet of unfitness that beggars description. Clowns, dupes, conspiracy theorists, and more clowns, grifters, an assemblage that should frighten the American people, but it doesn't. At least not all of us, at least not yet, but it will. When the history of this era is written, 50 years from now, 75 years from now, what will be observed is the fragility of the Americans of this era, who could not handle the things that our parents and our grandparents and their parents were able to deal with. In a period of mild inflation, of economic prosperity and peace, the American people whipped into a frenzy by algorithms that imprison them intellectually, by Fox News hosts who poison their minds with propaganda that brainwash them and idiotize them, with a malice in our politics that's indescribable. The people, by a slim plurality, decided to blow it up. The U.S. Justice Department, the U.S. justice system, far from perfect, is the envy of the world. And what Donald Trump has done is nominate an arsonist to go and wreck the greatest investigative body in the world, the FBI, to poison its mission, turn it against political enemies. The organizing principle of the Trump administration is very simple. Donald Trump doesn't want to hear no, ever. And he's surrounded by unelected sycophants like his son and the richest man in the world. It's an extraordinary thing. I say this as someone who's been in the room where it happens, who's been in the room with the president and the vice president. It's astonishing. The richest man in the world, who can launch himself into space, can have anything he wants, craves power. And it is as it has always been. And so the richest man in the world has purchased it, like he purchased Twitter and turned it into a cesspool of disinformation, misinformation, a hive of neo-Nazis, insanity, venom. And now the South African Musk has taken a lease out in the Oval Office. He's meeting with the Iranian ambassador. I wonder what it is that Elon and the Iranians are talking about. Do you think he knows what he's talking about because he's rich? Well, let's listen to Elon on politics.
Free speech is the bedrock of democracy. If people don't know what's going on, if they don't know the truth, how can you make an informed vote? You must have free speech in order to have democracy. That's why it's the First Amendment. And the Second Amendment is there to ensure that we have the First Amendment.
And by the way, it shouldn't be forgotten that this man has an extraordinary distaste for Jews. And one thing that is always true about any far-right government, the Jews, well, they're never safe for long. Who will be safe in America and who will not? It now rests with the whims of Donald Trump and his cabinet of unfitness, who will do as they're told, will exercise their power indiscriminately, and will abuse it with abandon. America is in trouble. A great crisis is upon us, and the only way out of it is through it. These are the early hours of the crisis that has been 9 years in the making. There were 9 years to stop what was coming, and now we'll find out the hard way. This moment requires the rising of an opposition, not of Democratic senators and a few Republicans who remain attached by threads maybe to common sense and to patriotism, and that may look or may not at Gates and Hegseth and Gabbard and Robert Kennedy and Kristi Noem and say, no way. For all the rest of us, it's important to understand and to orient around what is happening. Donald Trump is probing. He's testing the boundaries and the lines. He's daring the Republican senators to say no to him. The most appalling moments on television over the last 72 hours were those of Republican senators earnestly looking into television cameras saying that they'll study the case for and against Matt Gaetz, as if there is anything that Matt Gaetz could say that would justify his confirmation as the chief law enforcement officer of the United States.
Americans don't trust the Justice Department right now, and Matt has the talent to go in there and really make a difference. He's very talented, but let's face it, it'll be a little bit of a challenge for him, but I'm optimistic we'll do what we can do to get him across the finish line.
I completely trust President Trump's decision-making on this one.
I think Matt Gaetz is very bright. I think he's qualified. He'll have a hearing, and he'll have some tough questions to answer. But to every Republican, please follow a process to give President Trump the ability to pick the people he thinks can do the job.
President Trump was elected by an enormous vote, and he deserves the team around him that he wants. It's not us to determine that. We've got 53 votes in the Senate. We can confirm with 51. I've already seen where a couple of them says, I'm not voting for him. Wait a minute. You are not the United States of America. You have one vote in the U.S. Senate. You did not get elected president. Vote with President Trump. This is the last chance we're going to have of saving this country. And if you want to get in the way, fine. But we're going to try to get you out of the Senate, too, if you try to do that.
The only thing that anybody should say about a potential Gaetz confirmation is turn over the Matt Gaetz file. Tulsi Gabbard, she's a cult member. She believes that yoga gives her the power not to stretch, but to divine real truth. A lot of people have escaped from her cult and described the abuses of the person she calls her spiritual father. There are a lot of things that Tulsi Gabbard may or may not be good at. Being director of national intelligence is definitely not one of them. There must be celebrations in the Kremlin, not because she's an agent, but because Donald Trump picked one of the most dim-witted amongst us for one of our most important jobs. Trump is just getting started. What will fill in under these people, should they make it, is even worse. And should he get them through, Trump will push harder and he will take more. His nominating of these people is a declaration of I'm going to do whatever I want and I dare you to stop me. He's feeling his oats. He's feeling his power. He's feeling his immunity. The era of lawlessness is upon us, brought to us by one of the greatest acts of cynicism in American history. It's not important to dwell on it for sake of punishing Joe Biden. It's just important to realize that when the same people say the same old things in the next few weeks and try to cling to their power, then it's for them, not for you. It's a scam for them, not for you. And the cost for you is so catastrophically high. What's coming is frightening. The abuses are frightening. The corruption is frightening. And if you appreciate that all of this is very fragile, it's even more frightening still. And yet, a good American does not quit. A good American does not turn away from the fight. A good American is undeterred when it comes to fighting for the right. A good American understands that sometimes there are setbacks and sometimes patience is required in a fight. A good American realizes that they will never submit to the whims of a tyrant trying to take things from them. Things like their liberty, control of their body. Donald Trump won an election, does not give him purchase to fill the government indiscriminately with loons, turn them loose, attacking the American way of life. There are checks and there are balances if they'll be exercised by Republican senators along with their Democratic colleagues. The next election is more than 715 days away, but it will come, and faster than it seems. When it does, the punishment for the extremism that's about to be set upon us must be taken out on those moderate Republicans who try to hide and get in line. Those people must pay the price. Chuck Schumer is the leader of the Senate Democrats. And that's a tragedy because he's even less prepared than Biden was to succeed. He is overmatched at every conceivable level. And yet, the Democratic senators will rally to him because failing upwards, that's their dogma. And soon, Stacey Abrams will likely be the chair of the Democratic National Committee. a 2 times failed gubernatorial candidate who wanted to defund the police and refused to concede the election. A perfect pick to reform the party, to fix it, to mend it, and to get it into fighting shape to oppose Vance 4 years from now. What a carnival of stupidity. And yet, pointing that out doesn't give me any satisfaction. It makes me angry, and it makes me sad because the DNC has to be in the fight because of these people. These people are a tremendous threat to the American way of life, to the public health, to our safety, to our security, and to our liberty. And there must be an American movement that rises in opposition. And the career Washington, D.C. politicians with magic letter D next to their name have failed. They failed the Democratic Party, and they failed the country, and they failed you. Donald Trump means every word of what was written in Project 2025. It's all coming, and they told you it was coming over and over and over again. And now it's here. Stand up and fight back. This is The Warning. I'm Steve Schmidt. This is The Warning, and I invite you to subscribe on our Substack, on our YouTube channel. Follow us. Welcome to the community.